We see these creators who have everything we could ever want. We see these directors, these producers who like are working on these projects that we can only dream of. And we'll never do that unless like we actually want to be doing that. Actually doing the work is what contributes to the rich life that we're dreaming about. Seeing content really explode, and then the next day you post something that doesn't get any views at all. And that's when he was first touring with the Chainsmokers and growing his audience. And then
this is Produced With. Honest conversations about how great work gets made and the cost of doing it right. And before we get started, we're really into the analytics and we notice a lot of you are watching but aren't subscribed. Please consider like, subscribe so that you can actually keep up with the show. Reese, good to see you, man. How you been?
Great to see you, Jens. Doing well. Been busy and I'm grateful for that.
You know, I think most of maybe like your audience or like audiences online know you as like the freelance expert, and you've cultivated such an amazing community, and I'm just curious, like, what are you up to these days? Like, what kind of takes up most of like your plate?
For the past year and a half, I've woken up and started making content, like first thing, because in late November of 2023, that's when these budget videos that I make on Instagram first started gaining traction. And I realized, okay, there's a real opportunity here. So that's when I kind of reformatted my schedule to just like first thing, no matter what, no matter how busy I am, I got to wake up and make content just because I really want to capitalize on this opportunity. So that's what the first portion of my day usually looks like. I'm writing blogs for my website. I'm doing other kinds of email writing, etc., for the products that I sell and just for my newsletters, that kind of thing. And then I'm making content for social media, mainly for my Instagram.
Keep going in your day. That's like what, 8 a.m.?
Yeah, that's like, 8 a.m. to 9:30,
have you had your coffee
10.
yet? Or?
Yeah, I take the coffee straight away. Then I jump into my client work. So the bulk of how I make my bread and butter is through production. And that's usually non-union, small to medium small commercial projects, social media projects, etc., for clients. So making ads, making marketing material, making social content, and often that'll be 1 to 2 day shoots on set that I'm producing for, pitching, building creatives for, then doing pre-production on set, and then managing post-production, kind of end-to-end stuff. But sometimes, like these days, it's been a lot more of just post-production, doing animated assets or motion graphics assets, or just managing different creators, shooting stuff. I've been trying to spend less time on set and more time creating content. So often these days, I've been doing some remote producing as well, just getting production coordinators on site for me, but trying to stay home more often.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me about that. I haven't actually heard the term remote producing. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's just basically like I am kind of like the top level line producer, but I don't want to be on set. So for the kinds of projects that we run, that is feasible. So I can get a production coordinator or another co-producer just to be the one who's on set with me, whether that's a travel project that I don't want to travel for, or if it's something locally that I just like don't really want to spend the time like being on set for. As well as anybody how draining that is and how taxing that is. I kind of identified that as one of the key things that reduced my consistency with content creation. And since that's becoming more of a priority for me, it was like, okay, I could still produce stuff. I could still be the one in the zone with clients every day. But if I can avoid these 14-hour days that just like throw my week upside down, then that's like ideal. So that's what I've been trying to do more and more these days.
It's kind of interesting because I always say, like, if you're like a good producer, you should almost be like doing nothing on the day of. Like a lot of it like really is in the pre-planning and bringing everything together. And if you've done your job right, like everything is in motion and you're just really, it's like putting out fires, but hopefully there aren't any. Do you find that that's kind of like the leverage of like remote producing here is like you've done kind of all the like lifting, so to speak, and all that on the beginning of it?
Yeah, that's a really great way to describe it. I've seen that play out just how you said. Early in my career, I felt like I had to be on set at every given moment because there were so many answers in my head that I hadn't systemized or put down on paper or delegated that if I wasn't on set, it would be a big deal. It would be bad news. as time has gone on and I've got better at delegating and systemizing these things and getting all these answers out of my head and into other people's heads and, into their inboxes, really, that's made it more possible for me not to be on set. Because even these days, now that I feel more confident in my kind of small to small, medium, non-union commercial productions, when I get on set, I'm kind of just doing nothing, which is great. But that's kind of what I realized, like, oh, if I really am not bringing a ton of value on set and I want to be on set less, then it's possible.
Are we talking about like brands are hiring you as the agency, or are you just kind of like freelancing to another production as a remote producer? Like how does that typically work in terms of engagement?
It's been about 50-50 or a little bit more on the side. So sometimes I'll just be a freelance producer for a production company that brings me on to produce that project, and I just run through them. I've also have a minority ownership in a small production company called Us Versus Them that I run with my friend Jeremiah Davis. We've been doing that. He's been running the company since 2020. I've been on board since 2023 in an official capacity, but I've been working with Jeremiah for a long time. So, when I'm working through Us Versus Them, then that is kind of the end-to-end thing I was describing earlier, where it's like connecting with clients, taking the initial discovery calls, pitching them, building the creative, pre-pro, production, post, delivery, follow-ups, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's about 50-50, that business, Us Versus Them. We've built it to be pretty modular, so sometimes that's all we're working on. And then sometimes, it's like a low overhead business that then we can kind of let coast while we jump on another solo freelance project or do a creator type thing, so it's been good.
It's so interesting to me, like, especially within like the freelance world, like there's not like a kind of like a one way or like a linear kind of path to anything, like really, but like especially when you're talking about top of funnel and like how you get the work or the projects or whatever it might be. Can you describe, or like maybe your process of like how that works? Like how do you, I always feel like there's like two types of like producing. Like one is more like line producing. You're like basically like getting the thing handed to you, or, and you're working with it. And then there's like a form of like creative producing where you're like active, or even like maybe even sales producing where you're like basically trying to like sell it. For you, your company, however you kind of want it, what does the pipeline look like for that? Like for people that are trying to break into producing, or, at least at the client level, like version of producing, what does that look like?
I can explain what that looks like. I want to connect this to what we were chatting about earlier a little bit, which is like, the industry has been so up and down. Part of the reason that it's been pretty steady for me throughout the course of my career is because for most of my projects, I've been producing or line producing, which, has me working for weeks at least instead of days. And then also if I'm, running my own projects through my own business, then that has me working for 6 weeks to a couple months on a project because of all the pitching and the post and all that stuff that goes into it. So that's just, I think, part of the advantage of working on the production side or trying to own more projects is like you're a little bit more immune to the weather of the industry, because you don't need to be working 20 days a month. You need to be working on 15 projects a year, like to be able to make your money, So, but how that process looks like is, we have a website with our portfolio, and we've connected with a number of brands and people working at brands over the years. And so, whether it's a past marketing manager or director that we've worked with in the past at a different brand, they get a job at a new company, and then they're looking for someone to produce content for them. They see our website, they remember us, they reach out, we set up a call, that kind of thing. Or, now that I've been able to grow my following on social media, some leads will come through that as well. My business partner, Jeremiah Davis, also has had a large following on social media for a long time. He got his start shooting tour videos for the Chainsmokers. So he's had some recognition online for a number of years. So those are also like good inbound kind of sales funnels. People see, that kind of high visibility work and then reach out to us, want us to create, an ad for them, create a commercial, create a package of social assets, create a digital launch video, that kind of thing. So what that process looks like is we get on a discovery call and hear what are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish? We try to pull the budget out of them. And then, send them a pitch deck of like, here's a top level creative concept of what you could create. Here are 2 or 3 budget tiers of how you could create it. This is what the timeline would look like. Yay or nay, and then when they jump on that, and then we contract it and start the creative build and the pre-production, and that's usually a couple rounds of just putting rough ideas down on paper. It's not rocket science. It's not even like very professional storyboards or anything. It's just like mood boards, references, temporary scripts, really crappy, like pulled swipe images to create these dumb little storyboards that just help someone who isn't a filmmaker see what their film might look like. That's kind of how we get those creatives across the line. And then we go into pre-production, which is just getting all the details going, on-set production, and then post.
In that particular model, I'm so curious because there's like traditional ways, and then like you strike me as like somebody that is very untraditional in the sense that like obviously you are foremost doing content creation and things as like lead gens, and it's not like the call it agency route and you're pitching on projects and so on. Have you had experience with that and then moved into something like this, or was this kind of like the entry point and you kind of crafted and created your own model as you kind of like just have done?
Yeah, this was always the path. I had very sparse experience interning and being a freelancer at an ad agency when I was in college and getting out of college. And I kind of saw like a very traditional pathway there that was like, okay, if you grind it out as like a low-level accounts person, and then you try to make the jump over to the creative side, then you can grind it out and sort of help on some projects, and it might be 5 years before you're really impacting creative, right? So then I was really inspired leaving that to be like, no, I can just go direct to clients and pitch them the whole project and run the whole thing. And that's what Jeremiah and I were doing early on in those days. And like, it wasn't always super glamorous. We're talking about social media projects that were 10 grand or 20 grand or something. We're like trying to scrape it together and pull buddies like to shoot this thing. And then, slowly, little by little, getting bigger budgets, upping the production value of the projects, and left foot, right foot, bigger budget, better production value, getting into this zone of that thing. So it always was kind of this like direct to brand, untraditional path where it's like, we'll provide a marketing solution for you directly, as opposed to kind of swimming in the ocean with the big ad agencies and trying to do it all super traditionally.
So it kind of feels like for you, if I'm describing it right, it's like you're an agency and a production company kind of together, and you're almost full service in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's so many brands that I think are left behind by the traditional agency model. The traditional agency model can work with these big household name type brands really easily, because they can get those big budgets and they have the machines to be able to work it. But it's like if you have some kind of brand that's doing $1 million in revenue, it's like that's like not nothing. You need to spend money on marketing at that level, right? But you can't, you're not spending 250 grand on a shoot. You're spending 10K a month or something like that. So it's like, who services those brands, and how do we service them well in a better way than just some random solo, film guy? And that's kind of the opportunity that we found that has like helped us, notch up little by little.
And with that particular model, is it like you're the creative or the director, or do you have like a roster of directors? Like how does the creative kind of shape?
We've been very involved in all aspects of creative. As the projects have gotten a little bit bigger, we've started to bring on different directors or different DPs, et cetera. My business partner, Jeremiah, has been a combo director / DP on these projects for a lot of years. And I've been, kind of producer / AD, as we've gotten these crews that have gotten bigger, then we start like outsourcing these roles, et cetera. But like from the beginning, I've been doing a lot of copywriting, a lot of script writing, a lot of concept development, pulling mood boards together, even little things. And that's what was so exciting to me about going this untraditional path was like, there's like copywriting that I did on, campaigns for DJI or like Chainsmokers music videos that like I just did because it needed to get done and no one else was going to do it kind of thing. It wasn't like there was ever like a budget or something to like, okay, we're going to bring on a copywriter and have like a traditional writing session and build it and go through these rounds. It was like, no, we need like this piece of copy for this. And that was always something that I was interested in was writing. So it was cool. It was like I just got to get my hands dirty so much quicker than I would have, I think, if I had gone a traditional path.
That makes sense. I love that you were able to bridge that kind of gap between the writing and production and all those things.
There's
really
so much writing when you're pitching your own projects too.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn to communicate complex creative ideas to someone who isn't necessarily that seasoned of a creative professional. You have to be able to explain what the video will look like to someone who isn't very good yet at imagining videos in their mind. So it's really challenging and exciting. You have to do a lot of writing to do that.
Because it's inbound, is there still some form of like a pitch process? Like, are you creating some sort of deck or like assets or or is it just more inbound and it goes straight into like some sort of like, I don't know, like contract or something?
Yeah, in most cases, we're creating decks still with, full breakdowns of timelines and budgets and creative concepts on the front end. But it's much less competitive than a traditional like response to an RFP would be, because frankly, the brands who are like reaching out to us, they don't have that many options. They don't know that many people. Their budgets aren't big enough to like attract a lot of interest from, different production companies, et cetera. So it's like, if they reach out to us, we respond quickly, we put together a pretty solid plan for them. They may not even be reaching out to anybody else after that. They would just say, no, sounds good. Let's run it. We need this video yesterday. So let's go, So there still is a lot of that. Sometimes if we're doing event capture type stuff, it is just like, hey, we capture events, like check out our portfolio. Let's rock and roll. We'll make you something. So it's like sometimes in those cases, there's not like a full pitch build process, but yeah, in most cases, we're still at least putting a plan on paper and a deck first.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you're engaging with some of these like clients, it is mostly direct to client. Like it's like a in-house marketing team or something like that.
Yeah,
like who are
it
you
would be an in-house.
with
It depends on the size of the brand. If it's a smaller brand, it could be the founder. Often it is. If it's the brand is doing $1 million or a couple million or less, often those brands get off the ground because their founders have some like marketing savvy internally. They just kind of love that stuff and they get into it. That's how they got it off the ground in the first place. So yeah, often at smaller brands, it is like going direct to founders, or they'll have some kind of like a marketing director or VP of marketing. For like these medium-sized brands, then talking to the marketing team or the social teams or, whoever's putting on the events that they're need captured or something like that. But it is, speaking directly with these folks and really helping them achieve their creative vision. That's what's exciting about it to me as well, is like all these folks are creative people, but they have gone the more like brand approach. But they have like great ideas often. They have like really interesting things of like how they can bring their brand to life in a commercial asset or in a social media asset. And we get to help pull that out of them and bring their idea to life and be on set with them and give them this experience of like, this was kind of your idea and now it's becoming a thing. And maybe you wouldn't have felt confident to like bring all your production in house, but like we're helping you make your idea come to life. That's just like a huge leg up that I've found in the sales process as well too, is like just helping people make cool stuff. I mean, that's the stuff of like a self-actualized life, right? Like you want to be creative and you want to create stuff that you're into, so it's been cool.
It reminded me of like kind of like a thought that I had around like you're probably looking super and uber successful, like winning every project, like on the front end, but I'm sure in the pitching process and all of that there's a lot of no's or like can't do it, or what does that ratio even look like? Is it like for every 10 there's like one that wins, or like, because you just mentioned sales process, and I'm curious how much time do you spend in a sales cycle And then, like, and how many no's are there in something like that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know if I could give you an exact figure. I think just because I focus so much more on the wins than the no's.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of no's, like I would say we're winning. If we take all like outreach and like potential leads as equal, maybe like a quarter, but like it's rare for us to like really get into like a pitch process and really pitch on a project unless it's like pretty big. It's rare for us to really dig into a pitch process and then not win it. Like, if we're really like in with the client, on calls with them, hearing what they want, designing something that could work for them, we may not be getting all the budget that we ask for, but, on some level, we'll be working together on the project. Like maybe that's 2/3 of the time, maybe only 1/3 of the time after we like go down that process.
That feels like a really good, still kind of like, I guess, like batting average, just because you're talking about warm leads, obviously, because they're inbound and reaching out to you. They already kind of want to work with you or your team to some extent. So that feels right. Do you feel like, I'm always curious, like when you think about pricing, it's a little wild west, right? Like based on creative and your kind of ability to price. And I know you speak a lot about this. So I'm really appreciative of like your transparency, like around this. Do you feel like, do you have like an internal metric that you put on that this has now not been worth my time? Because, like sometimes there's runaway projects or like you quote it for 10K or whatever it is. And it takes, 3 months or whatever, 6 months. And then it's like barely, enough to like meet your monthly minimums. Like, how do you psychologically like think about stuff like that?
The idea of like the constant production fee has been really helpful for me in just making sure that every project remains at least somewhat profitable. I know what you're talking about in the sense of like, oh, you're on a 10K project and it gets stretched from, a 2-week thing into like a 6-week thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is dragging on way too long.
Or even like, I know many people don't think of this, but like sometimes the sales process is also like time that like you're putting into it, right? Like, and so maybe some people are just physically, aggregating the production time or the production plus post time. But there's almost like sales, development, pre-production, like, and so on. And I'm curious, like, is there like a metric, or is it just kind of like a gut feeling on like, oh, this is profitable for me, or like I'm free in this like month and I think I can do it, or I can do multiple projects. Do you guys have like a systemized approach for it, or is it more like kind of feel it out based on like the project?
Yeah, it's kind of like a feel it out based on the project. I mean, we're not doing so many projects where like it really requires us to make sure that we're not, spending too much time on the pitch stuff. And also, like mentioned, like, once the ball gets rolling on things, we have a pretty high batting average, so to speak, as far as winning those projects and stuff too. So it's not something that we've like really had to dig into as like, how many hours exactly are we spending on this sales process? I think that also comes, like you mentioned, from the inboundness. The people who are reaching out to us are already at least sold on what we've done and have seen what we've done, as opposed to we're not spending a ton of time like, hammering cold emails or cold calls and like trying to convince people like, hey, we're legit, like bring us on, we can help you out, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of like more like rolled up into just the general business profit is like, that's kind of part of the responsibility as far as profiting from the business is obviously you got to keep that stuff going. But that said, I mean, it's a relatively small operation, so.
Talk to me about that. Like the inbound process, obviously a lot of it comes from your ability to create engaging content and build an audience, and people find you where they find you. Did you always know that like that was going to be like a path for you, or like how did you? I don't know a lot of producers that are content creators. It's kind of like they turn it on for like their work for hire brain, but they don't necessarily like turn it on for their own brand.
They're still putting the toaster filter on their Instagram posts.
Yeah. Like, how did you think that, like, did you immediately think that this was going to be like a way to like gain business, or like how did you get into content creation?
Yeah, well, I've been working peripherally with Jeremiah, not always on the partnership side, but I've been producing projects with him since 2017. And that's when he was first touring with the Chainsmokers and growing his audience. And then he would come home and have, a little brand project and bring me on to produce it. So I always saw the value that him going on tour, shooting the tour videos, having them post it, and then seeing, created by Jeremiah Davis in the bottom of the YouTube thing. I always saw the benefit of that pipeline. People would reach out and say, "Hey, we saw your Chainsmokers video. We run a real estate thing. Can you make us something like that?" You know what I mean? Which is just so funny. But like, that's how a lot of the early projects that I produced went. And that's how I got on them. And that's how they came to be. So I always saw the value of that from an early side. Now, I've been making content consistently since 2018. And it was only like anecdotally meaningful to me until about 2023. So it was about 5 years of just like creating content that was great, for me to, put pen to paper and get ideas out there and, make some small one-to-one connections and connect with people. But it wasn't ever something that like got a bunch of traction until 2023. So, yeah, I mean, I always saw that was a thing, and I always knew that it was something that I wanted to do. I just created content for those first 5 years without like a whole lot of traction, just for the love of it. I just wanted to contribute to the conversation. I wanted to get my ideas out into the world. I wanted to, take a shot at it. And then now that it has grown a lot, the audience has grown, and I've made more connections. I've seen the benefit, but I always knew that those would be there because I saw it firsthand with Jeremiah's socials.
Gotcha. And in that time, were you working with Jeremiah as a producer on those projects?
Yeah.
Or got it.
Yeah. So he would bring me on a one-off basis, or had me on, small retainers or something like that to do that. And then, in 2023, I jumped on the partnership side with his agency, Us Versus Them.
Tell me about like early content creation for you. Like what did that look like? Was that blog post or video, Instagram reels, or like, I don't even know if reels existed back then. I don't know how long ago you started, but just curious what was kind of the initial kind of way in?
I went to VidCon in Anaheim in 2018. And at VidCon, the founder of Instagram, who was still the CEO at that time, launched IGTV, if you remember that.
Oh, yes.
Which they were trying to compete with YouTube. It was a short-lived push into the long-form zone. But I was at that like keynote that he gave about like, this is what we're doing. It's called IGTV. And I was like, okay, I have some things that I've learned. I have some things that I want to share. And this is a new format for me to try to do it. I might as well try to like ride the wave if they're giving an algorithm boost to people who are, doing that. So I made, I really didn't have, I wasn't very organized at that time. I really didn't have a good schedule. I didn't have a lot of resources or energy or confidence to pour into this. But I was like, I'm just going to make one season, so to speak, of a series on IGTV about all the things I've learned so far as a freelancer. And I made 7 episodes. I shot them all. It was just me like talking to my phone, walking around, spitballing. And then I would go and edit them. And it was like every like and pause was cut out. So they're like super choppy and they're really endearing to look back on because, as a public speaker, I wasn't as seasoned as I've become now through it. But that was my first jump into the social media zone. And none of those videos blew up or gained much traction, but I did see that they started a lot of interesting conversations with people that I knew or knew peripherally. People started reaching out to me more of like, hey, I saw you posted a video about this. What do you think about this? I think it opened up doors for me that I wasn't totally aware of because I already had known the people who were reaching out to me. But I think because they saw I was making content, they were more likely to reach out and ask for advice or ask me to jump on a project or something like that. So that's how I started it. Pretty soon after that, I thought, it was fun to like come up with the ideas and write the scripts, but video creation is just too heavy of a lift for me. I want to do more writing. I was a big fan of Seth Godin. I still am, but he's done a daily blog now for like 18 years or 20 years or something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to write a blog every day for 30 days. That's how I got started blogging in 2018. So I did that. And then I took 11 months off. And then in 2019, I was like, okay, I'm going to do 60 blogs in 60 days. So I did that. In 2020, I was like, okay, let's do 100 blogs in 100 days. I started that challenge with 100 days left in 2020. So the end of 2020, I had written 100 blogs in 100 days. Then in the first day of 2021, I was like, I'm going to blog every day this year. So from late 2020 until the end of 2021, I published 465 blogs on my website in 465 days. Wow. And that was just like this gauntlet of like, you got to show up every day. It doesn't matter if it's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. It matters that you show up and that you publish every day. And that was really just like steamrolled the excuses out of me. It steamrolled all the like lack of confidence out of me and just turned me into like someone who could just be really consistent with it. So then, I mean, that was still 2021. I finished that up and still nothing crazy happened. But a lot of the blogs that I wrote in 2021 became initial thought starters for the chapters in my first book, which is called What Gives You the Right to Freelance. And it's just like practical tips and lessons that I've learned as a freelancer. A lot of those blogs that I wrote in that time became the first ideas for these chapters. So wrote that book in 2023, the beginning of 2023. And I was like, okay, I'm probably just going to self-publish this, just get it out, understand, how this process works. And I was like, I think a really great way to market this would be to grow my own socials. So then I really started investing money and time and energy into posting more consistently on social. I posted like 3 to 4 times a week from March of 2023. And I really didn't see any notable boost until the end of November of 2023. That's when I first started posting a few of those run the numbers budget videos. And those really got some traction. Those went like mini viral. A few of them have a few 100,000 views. Helped me gain a lot of connections with filmmakers and content creators. And they were just like really interested in it. And then I had this log on my website, on my Instagram of a ton of helpful content for them. So then that just kind of really got things moving for me on the social side. So that's kind of my whole, really brief, but whole story of content creation so far.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear and just how consistency really sometimes is the key to a lot of this and may even lead to other things that you didn't even realize. Like, I love that you said that it kind of led to the first couple chapters of the book. Even like some people could think like, oh, blogs like just kind of there, for that purpose, but it kind of parlayed into these other things, which, as you bring up run the numbers, I didn't realize that was kind of like the, call it viral hit out of all of the stuff, but it is how we met.
Yeah.
Somebody sent me one of your run the numbers videos and was just stoked about like seeing somebody, first of all, like do this, because sometimes people are always curious about the numbers behind things or whether they're accurate or not, but like just kind of this idea of like, it's some of the most siloed information, when you're talking about like shoots and stuff. How did that kind of launch? What was like the initial like genesis of run the numbers? Did you like write stuff before that hinted towards like something like this might do well? Like, was there a recipe behind that, or you just kind of tried it and then it was a runaway success?
It's funny with social media content. I feel like it's hard to always place exactly how an idea came to be, but there's a couple of memories that come to mind of how it came to be. So when I first started investing time and energy and money into creating content for my socials, I hired my cousin, who's Hudson Hopper. He's like really talented director and editor. I work with him a lot on our commercial projects, but he also has his own world going on. He's super cool. He just came over. I just gave him a couple $100 and he just like helped me like, come up with ideas first and like how to get some of these blogs into video form, etc. So we had been working together on that stuff for 5-6 months and just always kicking ideas back and forth. I think some of the initial videos that we made where it was like, videos about like how to develop a rate structure or videos about like how to put together a pitch to a client stuff. Whenever you talk about money or like, how to win projects, those videos did a little better than the other ones. None of them were super impactful or went viral by any means. But I think that was maybe the initial breadcrumb. And then I saw a personal finance real estate creator, being
Mhm.
like, if you want to buy a $600,000 house, here's how much you need to make to do that.
Yes,
And it
I've
broke down,
definitely
or
seen
like,
those.
here's
Yeah.
all the costs that are going to go into like a 600,000, here's your closing fees, here your real estate, like all this stuff. And I always found myself just like watching those videos, like, oh, it's super interesting to see where all the money goes and how much it's going to cost, or how much you actually need to make to be able to afford a house of a certain, cost. So I
Mhm.
remember talking to Hudson and being like, I'm seeing these real estate videos, like, seems interesting. Like maybe I could do a budget video like that. So I made a couple of those. Now, if you've seen my run the numbers videos, they have the saturation budget on the bottom. It looks super slick. I have like the reference video in the background. Then I'm like, have a screen cutout on the front. When I first did it, I just did like a screen recording of like a really crappy looking Google sheet. And I didn't even have a reference video in the back. I was like, this is what it would cost if you were doing a little photo shoot. And it was just me on camera with the screen recording of the Google sheet filling out numbers. And the first couple videos that I posted like that got like maybe 6,000 or 7,000 views at a time when I was usually getting like 1,000 views on videos.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like these are doing well. And then I just kind of kept doing those. And then the first couple run the numbers that I still didn't have like reference videos in the background. It was just me talking direct to camera. And then the first few that blew up got like 100,000 views or something over the course of a week. And I remember it pretty vividly because I had been working so hard for so long on making consistent content, and like it was meaningful to me and meaningful to other people, but nothing ever really like went viral for me. And I was like on a vacation in Big Bear in the mountains with my friends, and like the video was like going viral that weekend. And I didn't want to like be that guy that was like, guys, look, or like on my phone, because we're like having this like, it's a good getaway weekend. But I kept like stealing away to the bedroom I was staying in. Like,
Yeah, you would think
or,
like Big Bear's like the no phones
For
like
sure.
retreat. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like going to the bathroom, be like, oh my gosh, it has like 5,000 more views. It has like 25,000 views. It has 30,000 views. I was freaking out. It was really funny. It was fun.
It's amazing to see kind of where that's evolved to. When you like post something like that, now it seems like you're breaking down like other types of projects, not even just like your own. How do you go about like choosing like a project to break down, or like a video to do? Like what does that look like?
I always try to keep it in my wheelhouse of experience. So the kinds of projects at the kinds of scopes and budgets that I've produced in the past are the kinds of projects that I'm taking guesses on of how much they cost to create or how much you should charge your client for them. I don't want to get into a zone where I'm like, making budgets for projects that are like I don't know a whole lot about, or like way out of my wheelhouse.
Like a $50 million feature or
For
something
sure.
like
Yeah,
that.
totally.
Yeah.
That just hasn't been my wheelhouse so far. So I just kind of stayed away from that. But I mean, really, when I first found this format, I was like, anything that's interesting to me, I'll do it. So
Yeah.
some small, $10,000 little like conference recap video. I would break something like that down. I'd break down a commercial at like $150,000. I'd break down a music video at $40,000. Like just anything, a photo shoot, e-com photo shoot, or a lifestyle photo shoot. Anything I get my hands on, and just kind of seeing what people react to as well. The reason they go viral is because people react to them. Whether they think they're way too expensive, or they're way too cheap, or it's missing something substantial or whatever. It's been interesting to see what people react to at different budget levels and with different kinds of projects. It does seem like
there's always like a mini war in the comments there around, like you're saying, like it could be too expensive or not expensive enough, depending on their experience or non-experience in the space. So it's always fun to kind of read those as well.
Yeah, it's fun to engage with people, and really like, sometimes trolls just jump in and do the stuff. I mean, I also love trolls. Like I have 2 older brothers who just have been roasting me my entire existence. So like, I think I'm like pretty well set up for that. So like some of the comments I get, I think are so funny, dude. Cause like,
like give me an example of like 1 or 2 that's kind of
the one that kills me is there's this one guy, his name's Mershul, and he always comments like, I'll do it for $200 or something. And it's like this big commercial, and he like always does that, and I love it. And then there's this one guy, like when I was like really making them like every week, putting them out, and they were all going viral. This one guy just commented, "Oh, it's you again." Which I thought was so funny, dude. Because when you see something in the algorithm, and then you start seeing that creator over and over again, it's like so relatable. I was like, that's hilarious.
Well, obviously you're engaging with it, or like to some degree, like watching it long enough for it to pop up on your feed again.
Yeah. But I really enjoy interfacing with people where I can help them like break some sort of mental frame, or like a financial frame, or a limiting belief they had about how much they could make, or how much things cost, or how much they could charge, to put out a music video that maybe they had seen before and tell them, hey, in all actuality, this probably costs $75,000. And for them to think like, that's a year's salary. I mean, I can think back to my early days as a freelancer where I was like really scraping by, making no money, and just thinking like, man, if I could just make, X or, whatever kind of money. And then just seeing a budget of like, oh, this is more than you made last year, and it's on one video, and just helping shatter those like limiting beliefs, and help them reframe the understanding of the market that they're in, and understanding like, okay, people really are charging this much. That's just so helpful for people to see. I think that's been the most exciting part of it for me, is helping people, shatter those frames.
I do love that about like you and the content that you do, just because, like I was saying earlier, like a lot of this industry feels very siloed, and it's like really hard to get that information unless you do it yourself, or are somehow maybe in proximity to another person. Like, you're in LA obviously, and you might work with other agencies or producers or something like that, and you're able to kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit. And I think it's so important these days to like not gatekeep some of that, so that people know like, this, it's not some like glass ceiling that's there for them in terms of whether it's pricing or capability or customer, like, acquisition or client acquisition. It seems like your audience really resonates with that, because they're probably trying to level up in terms of like maybe what they're doing now as I don't know if this is accurate, but let's just say like as a videographer, and then they want to become a production company or something like that.
I mean, honesty plays well, Something I've been thinking about recently is like the thought of like, why am I not going viral? I used to think this all the time. Why am I not going viral? Like, isn't my content good enough? Isn't it good enough to go viral? I see this other content that's going viral, and mine's just as good. Isn't it good enough? It's not necessarily about being good enough. It's about being like honest enough. It's about being different enough. It's about being risky enough, funny enough, especially in this modern social media era. It's so much less about like, is the quality there? But like, are you willing to do something different, to really put yourself out there and to be honest? And I've gone through my own ups and downs in this content journey. I mean, seeing content really explode, and then the next day you post something that doesn't get any views at all, especially with the algorithm the way it is now, it can be kind of demoralizing. And what I always try to come back to when I'm in these moments of like, man, I haven't had a video really hit in like 2 weeks, like what's going on? What I really try to come back to is like, what can I bring people today? Like, what can I share? What can I expose? What am I afraid to talk about? What do I think is like, what if I'm really honest about something, it's going to help somebody. Like, what can I be really honest about? How can I really help someone? That's the kind of thought I try to come back to when I haven't had a video that's like really resonated with people, is like, how can I be more open and more honest? Because that's the stuff that's always worked, and it's just led to great conversations, and I think it's just really helped the people in the industry figure some things out.
I don't know if you've seen that article recently that came out about how 71% of film budgets go over budget. It's crazy to think that like, this has become like a standard in the industry, and you just kind of have to keep going with it. I don't know if you've heard of Saturation, but Saturation is the next gen budgeting tool that you can use to streamline all of your operations and your budgets and your finances on a project. It gives you really easy collaborative tools, and you're able to bring in your budgets and your actuals and your expenses all in one place. If you haven't tried it yet, go to saturation.io, sign up for a free account. It's really easy and quick to sign up. In terms of that, like, do you see that like certain things that you're like honest about resonate more than others? Like when you say like some of the riskier stuff, is that like just purely like financial, or like how does that like break down in terms of like what resonates?
It depends. I mean, I think you and I have talked about this in terms of social content in the past a little bit, but like, the financial stuff obviously resonates like with a pain point, but like if you can kind of identify like what are people really struggling with and what are they having trouble with, that's just like a great entry point in to try to capture attention on social media. And then also like if you can share a bit of your story or talk about something that people are usually afraid to talk about, or maybe in a way give away a little bit of a competitive advantage, or what might be perceived as a competitive advantage, like realistically the people watching my content probably aren't pitching on the same projects as me. And if they are, like,
Really?
I don't know, maybe they learn one thing that I do that, takes away from my competitive advantage, but it's like, I feel like the benefits are so much greater, So it's not usually just like talking about financial stuff, but it could be, talking about a topic that people really love is like clients ghosting, or like someone ghosting. Like it's just kind of like a pain point that hurts, and it's like, how do we get over this? How do we get people to respond? How do we create things that people respond to more often? It's kind of these like pain points and being willing to talk about them. As like, you don't hear a lot of like business content creators being like, people are ghosting me,
Sure.
but like, if you're willing to be open and honest about that, then people are like, oh yeah, I get ghosted all the time by clients.
Same. Me too.
Yeah.
For sure. No, it's so true. Like I think through like some of the stuff that like, even with what we're doing now, like it feels like the more transparent you can be, or in this case, honest, or, it feels like it really does unlock something, especially while, there's probably some like verticals of like why people are like doom scrolling on like these different like platforms. But I love it as like an educational type of like medium. Like, I'm constantly these days watching YouTube or TikTok for more of my information than I ever have before, versus like a news source or a book or a maybe a blog article or something like that. And it just feels like meeting them where they're at, and also like being able to like, yeah, like you're saying, like expose something. So I find it interesting to see like how people are like navigating like what they feel like comfortable in terms of like sharing or not. But I love what you're saying about like competitive advantage. Like it's like some people might think that's something that I have to gatekeep or like hold close to my chest because my whole worth, or like the production is sustained by like my knowledge. So it's really cool that how do you like, is that something that you feel like has been like mental blockage for you, or and that's something that you have to constantly come against, or do you feel like you're naturally able to just kind of think this way and be able to just be the open book that maybe it's being perceived as?
Yeah, I think it goes through waves, right? Like it depends on how I feel. It depends on how things have been going. I think openness and generosity and honesty are always difficult, no matter what stage of life you are in. So, for example, I post a few videos that get a lot of traction, and I get a lot of, people to sign up for my email lists or whatever. And then I start thinking like, okay, how do I maximize on this? Like how do I push for this? And then it's like, then I start making videos about like how to try to get more emails or try to like push people towards, some of my products to buy them, et cetera. Not to say that any of that is bad, but I think we see this sort of circular spiral in so many facets of life, right? It's really hard for a professional sports team to repeat or to three-peat a championship, because once you win, you've won and you're a winner and you live the lifestyle. You have all the benefits that come along with that. And it's like, how do you recreate that hunger that initially created the championship in the first place? How do you keep that alive? It's like, and we think the same thing, right? Like once you start gaining success, it becomes more difficult to find humility, to be humble. Like we see these circles everywhere in life. And so I think it's always a challenge. I don't think there will ever be a point where it's like, okay, I've got this openness, generosity thing like systemized now, right? There's always going to be like this internal battle of like not living with abundance, like not being generous, not trying to help people, trying to hold things closer to the chest. There's always going to be that. Like I think at every level, stage of success, everything that we achieve, there will always be like a temptation to start living like that. And it's always a battle to try to open up the hands, to be more generous, to live with an abundance mindset. Like it's always a battle. So I don't know. I think when I get down to my core beliefs of like, why am I here? What am I trying to do for the world? Then I know deep down in my heart, like I'm here to educate people. I'm here to empower people. I'm here to help them, achieve what they want to achieve. Like that's what being here is all about. I want to teach people. I want to help people. But that doesn't come naturally. Like I kind of have to go through these stages of like, again, discomfort or discontent to realize like, no, come back to the heart of it. Like, what are you doing here? You're here to help people,
You kind of are answering this, but I kind of want you to double click into it. You mentioned that there's like the droughts or like the dry seasons of views or whatever it might be, but you have to continue to be consistent or generate new ideas or continue to create. What continues to like drive that? Like it sounds insane. Like when you see data and the data's like telling you like this isn't working, and then you continue to like do it. Like what, is it a purpose thing? Is it a like, what kind of, if you can distill that, like what keeps you going?
You got to love the process. You have to love what you're actually doing. That's what kept me going through writing all those years when there wasn't any data to back it up. Like I wrote for a whole year and I think I got like 2,000 website hits for like writing you know what I mean? But the reason I kept doing it was because I enjoyed the process genuinely and it was enriching my life genuinely, right? We see these creators who have everything we could ever want. We see these directors or these people who own production companies, these producers who like are working on these projects that we can only dream of, right? But we'll never get there and we'll never do that unless like we actually want to be doing that. Like actually doing the work is what contributes to the rich life that we're dreaming about, And it's like we can envy, I can envy these authors now who like sell way more books than me and like have written all this interesting stuff and have been on all these cool podcasts and met all these cool people. I can envy them. But the reality is like, if I achieve what they achieved, my day looks a lot like sitting down at a desk and writing. If you become a movie director, your day looks a lot like coming up with shot plans every day and shooting, and working with actors, that kind of thing. So like, in order to push through these dips and these slumps and to get over what the data is telling you is crazy or is not right, you just have to love it, right? So in that point, if you really do love it, then it doesn't matter if it's working out because it is enriching your life. It is contributing to your rich life. But if you don't love it, then it's like, that's where you start to like wonder, like, is this worth it? Should I change? Should I switch it up? Et cetera. Of course, there's other layers that go into there about making the kind of money that you need to make, et cetera. But
sure. And that's a hard line, right? Because obviously it's tied to some sort of commerce or like, being able to make money. And at the same time, try to detach yourself from like that. That's not necessarily the end goal, although that's a part of the goal, to be able to like sustain or make money or, live in abundance in that sense. But when that solely becomes the identity of why you're doing it, it feels like that's where you can get into trouble because you're not necessarily enjoying the process or loving the art or, finding other purpose in what you're doing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you saw this, but Will Smith has been kind of on this like recent podcast tour and just kind of opening up about like all the recent stuff that's happened. And he said this one line where he said that he realized he came to the end of the material world. Like he got all of it, the success, the fame, the money, and all of it. And to the point that I think you're making, like, it's never enough. Even that didn't necessarily make him happy, fulfilled, or, and so it almost feels like you have to consistently remind yourself, like, in the now and the why of, like, that you're doing it to really, it's such an easier said than done, that I feel, kind of like statement of, like, yeah, of course everybody to some degree knows to, like, realize to love the process or whatever it might be, but you can kind of get caught up in the just the production of it all, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not really a question, but just kind of like just enhancing the thought that you're kind of saying there.
It's a battle. It's a challenge, that's one of the things that I think about a lot is, like, am I enjoying my life? Can I enjoy my life? Like, this is the challenge that I face every day, is like, can I be in the present moment to enjoy all of this? Because we get to be here one time, we get to do this once. And here we are, lucky enough to at least be able to, at the very least, scrape out a living doing creative work, which I think for most people on earth right now would be an amazing dream. For most people in the course of human history would be unthinkable to be able to be an artist, But I'm not the kind of artist, I'm not working on the kind of, my books haven't sold that, but it's like, if you look at it from this big top level perspective, it's like, we are making money, making art. Dude, So yeah, but it's a challenge. I mean, it's tough, and it, like I mentioned before, it's like these cycles. Like, I get into them where it's like, when I'm down bad, I'm really thinking, and I'm like, okay, like, let's get back to the heart of it. What is this all about? But then I'm up and I'm feeling cocky. I'm feeling good. And I'm wondering, it's how it goes.
Yeah, no, totally. I want to ask you about the book, just because I know, I know you mentioned it earlier. Your book about freelancing essentially is trying to unlock this idea that anybody can really do this, and, like, there's, I'm sure, the 1,000 questions that, like, people go through, like, and I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, mainly because I'm not as much of a reader as I should be. It's something that I am working on, but over the course of knowing you, this has been, like, one of the coolest things that, as I think I've experienced in a friendship. I've now talked to a handful of people, and your name will come up, and because they've read the book, and
it's awesome.
it's amazing. Yeah, whatever you're doing is working, and obviously it's impacting people's lives in terms of, like, how they're shaping, like, their careers. But I just thought it was amazing to just that there's so many people that have told me about it. Tell me about, like, your kind of, like, hot take on, like, freelancing, and, like, this idea that, like, I remember you saying something somewhere around, like, that everybody should be a freelancer, like, and talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's my hot take. Everyone should freelance in some capacity, whether you keep your full-time job, whether you only do it once, you should do it. You should go try to make $300 on a weekend providing a service to someone, a creative service, or, a service-based, offering. It's so challenging and it's so rewarding that I really think it is one of life's enriching experiences, to be able to take a skill that you have. We all have skills. Take a skill that you have to the market and turn that into money is so exciting and enriching, And I think it's really empowering, especially in the era we live now, in which large companies lay off large portions of their workforce on a Thursday morning, like, to just know that you're not fully tied to someone else's decision as far as at least making a little bit of money, right? And then it's also empowering where it's like, many people feel like, oh, I can't go on this vacation because I can't afford it, right? But it's so within everyone's power to make a extra $1,000 on a weekend as a freelancer. And it's like, well, if you did that once a year, this trip that you can't afford, like maybe now you can, or, this kind of thing you want to do, or you want to upgrade your house, you want to buy a car, or whatever it is. I think it's just really empowering. So that's my hot take of freelancing is I really think that everyone can and should try to at least do it a little bit. And I could see this bringing a lot of meaning, not just for people who are starting their careers or who are in parts of their careers where they need to be earning a little more. You think of young families or people who have become stay-at-home parents, but they want to keep contributing to the income. Not just for them. I see it even for older folks. It's like, oh, you've retired from your job, right? But you still want to like contribute something to your community. You want to provide a service to people. You have a lot of skills and wisdom that you can bring to people. It's just this enriching life experience, and then make a few bucks and do something with it. Like I think it's just really exciting.
It's interesting because I used to think, or I'm still kind of debating around this idea, like, because when we think of like freelance, there's this part entrepreneurial kind of like spirit, or just kind of like muscle that you're flexing. Are people born with that, or like like, is it just like an innate deep desire that like comes out, or is it learned? Like, do you kind of have like a thought around, or maybe it's a mix of both? Do you have like a thought around that when you think of like freelancing, or like this idea of like being your own boss and like, having some sort of entrepreneurial spirit?
The idea of freelancing or entrepreneurship scares a lot of people because they're afraid to sell. I think that is more of a picture of our culture, of Western culture. Things have prices, and you see them and you buy them. We're not like a bartering culture. We're not a trading culture. We're not a kind of culture that does that, at least in the West for the most part. So I think what scares a lot of people about freelancing is like, oh, I don't want to be a pushy salesperson. I don't want to get on the call and like try to sell something to somebody. That's like the big main objection that people have to it. They love the thought of like, oh, it'd be cool to do calligraphy on someone's wedding invitations. I could charge $500 for that, but like, I don't want to sell any, you know what I mean? And people are even resistant to charging when they have projects in the bag that people who are like willing to pay, because they're just afraid to deal with money, and they don't want it to change hands. They're afraid to sell. They don't want it to get awkward, right? What I tell people is that these are just skills that you can learn. And definitely some people are better at it than others. Some people who have what we would call the entrepreneurial spirit, or the mindset, or, who are just born to be business people, right? There are people who are born with that, but these are just skills.
To this point, there is like a mix of both that I feel. I 100% agree with you. Like, especially as you kind of touched on the cultural aspect of it. What's also interesting about the cultural aspect of it is, we now live in a more corporate level like culture. Like, it didn't really exist back in the day. Like, if you think about like whether it's like old culture, or maybe even Eastern culture, I don't know where it really stems from, but like if I think about like 200 plus years ago, a lot of it feels like the bartering type of like culture versus like you're working for like somebody's company. Like, you might have a business that passes down to your like children, and if you were your dad was the shoemaker, you were going to continue to be the shoemaker, and you might be trading that for like food, or or selling, and so on. And everybody in the village is doing some form of trading or selling. It's not necessarily that there's like a ton of like a huge corporation down the block that like 200 people in the town were working for. And I feel like in a lot of ways that's desensitized us to a part of us that might be innately there. But to your point, like, I think some of that is skills that are a muscle. Like, you don't use it, or you don't learn it, you don't acquire it. It kind of will just go away or disappear, or kind of, and it makes this, in that culture, it makes a dependency to work or the 9 to 5 or whatever it might be. But I actually do think as a people group, like, I think we actually are more maybe innate to the being able to like freelance, or like create small businesses or whatever it might be. And then we got like told or like shaped into this, oh no, like actually if you just work this, like it's safe, it's comfortable, you know, you can always kind of like predict it, and it's kind of shaped a new culture. And I think we're seeing a resurgence a little bit out of that. I don't know if you feel that as well, like with the now gig economy and like yes, there's still a corporation behind it, but it's almost like creating a platform to do that again. And so it does feel like it's very in line with what you're saying. I don't know if you feel that as well, but yeah.
It's interesting to hear you mention that because yeah, you're right. We don't have shoe cobblers anymore. You know, we all get our shoes at big stores online. They're all made, you know, somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And we don't have, you know, as many bookstores, or we don't have print shops. You know, we get that stuff, you know, there's like all these things that have gone away, right? Where you're mentioning
farming or like,
yeah, you know, the kind of stuff that now we can just order from Amazon or another big company or something. But I think that also opens up an opportunity more for these kinds of creative services and these creative deliverables to be, you know, now we don't have to run a business of like making shoes, but there's opportunity now like to be creative. Or like you even mentioned with the gig economy, like let's take Uber as like the key example of that. People need to get from one physical space to another physical space. And it's like, there's like this hands-on service-based idea. You can take coffee shops as well as like another example of that, where it's like people want to go and get a cup of coffee. Like there are still some like base level physical needs that we now have the opportunity to provide to each other on a one-to-one basis more easily, that I don't think will ever go away, you know?
No, absolutely. It's interesting. Like technology, I think, is opening up more of that. Like obviously you could have freelanced in the past, or like maybe like have your own thing, but like, you know, nowadays, like you have things like Shopify or the Uber, or, you know, these things that kind of help you create your storefront or create the small business or whatever it might be. I'm curious, when you're thinking about like your world, the products, the ecosystem, and all of that, what are your current revenue streams, and like do you have like a tech stack or so like that like powers your freelancing kind of like moat, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it runs through Squarespace. I've been a big fan of Squarespace forever, just because I just found it like a really great combination of ease and capability and like design, you know, creating a good website. And I've just stuck with them because for me, I'd rather just stay in one tech stack, you know, as opposed to like trying to use Zapier to connect all these different things. Now, I do have some other tools. Squarespace doesn't provide everything, you know. I run a little online challenge community called the 15-Day Creative Consistency Challenge. I've done that a couple of times this year. I run that on a platform called Circle, which is like a community-based platform.
A community thing, yeah.
It's got like walls and chats and forums and classes, that kind of thing. So I use that. I use a different program called Demio for live streams. It just lets me do webinars a little better and easier, you know, puts it all out there. But there are, like you mentioned, so many interesting pieces of tech that you can use to run your business. And they're all like so cheap in comparison to what it would have taken in the past. So for example, I sell a guide on my website called the Producing Guide. It's just basically like a huge web page with a bunch of different, it's very searchable, really intuitive about everything I've learned about producing, basically. So you can just go on and like search. If you have a question about anything, you go on and search and do that. If we're thinking like before the internet age, for me to put out a producing guide, that would have to be like a book, or at least like a little pamphlet. It would have a lot of upfront cost, printing costs, shipping costs, like doing all, to get that out there. That's prohibitively time consuming and expensive. But now it's like, I just spent time writing on my laptop for a couple months, put everything in this guide, put it up, as a private web page that I sell to people. So it makes it a lot more achievable to do stuff like that, to sell things online, just from a time, energy, and money perspective.
I'd be curious when you think about like technology enhancing the distribution of creativity for you. How do you feel about AI in that as kind of like this next kind of foray into technology? Do you use it much now? Do you kind of have a thought around like, does that further distribute your creativity? Does that hurt it? Like, how are you thinking about it?
I haven't incorporated much AI into much of my creative process. I think I feel a little precious about it because I'm a writer, and obviously like one of the key things that AI does is it writes stuff for you. So, I probably have a bit of a chip on my shoulder as far as like when AI says, "Hey, let me write this email for you." I'm like, "No, get out of here." I could do that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, AI has fantastic implications for so many corners of our world. But I don't think it has fantastic implications as far as original creation, original thought creation, if only because for so many people, and for me included, having an idea and seeing it come to life as a real product, a real film, a real book, a real blog post, having an idea and seeing it come to life is the enriching experience of life. The creation process is what I love to do, right? And it's like, obviously AI provides a lot of benefits to that to make that stuff easier. And they want you to generate images or generate text or generate movie scripts or whatever with AI. But like, will people be able to lay down that experience? Will we give that up? Will we put down our ego? Because how intoxicating it is. Like when you see what was your idea on a screen, it's like, that's me. I did that. Are we going to be able to lay down our ego in service of AI doing that kind of stuff for us? I think on some level, we will always want to have those ideas in our brains. And it's like, this is kind of meme level talk about clients, but you have some clients who give notes sometimes and you're like, you're just giving this note because you want to have your fingers in here. You want to be part of the creation process, right? And it's like, as annoying and memeable as that is, I think that has an insight of like, man, this doesn't really affect the creative at all, but this person still wants to have their hand in it, to put their fingerprint on it, right? So I don't know. As far as AI goes, obviously, I'm not an expert. It has great cultural implications, economic implications that I don't even understand. It's going to go somewhere that we don't even understand. But from the creative process, like, I'm just doubtful that we'll give that up. I think people are still going to want to be able to take something from their brain and turn it into something real.
I think I have to look at AI as like, can it be a super tool to enhance like maybe the like what you're doing? It shouldn't be able to like take over the creativity. It should maybe take over like the things that are non-creative or logistical or like the other parts to kind of keep you in the creative seat further. Like
you see this a lot, right? Like let's say with Adobe's products, Photoshop, right? Like it can cut out images like that. It can do a lot of stuff like that. And it's like, that's exactly what you're talking about, where it's like, yeah, it's making the technical stuff more accessible to more people. The kind of people who never would have learned to mask out an image, now are doing it and they're creating stuff. That's cool.
I mean, I think of it in the same way of like just technology in general, not necessarily AI as in its generative form, but if I didn't have, to the earlier point you were making, if I didn't have some of these tools like Adobe when I was growing up, or the DSLR revolution when that came out, I wouldn't have been a filmmaker. I wasn't the kid with the Super 8 film camera or just the access to these various different tools. And I think it's going to be interesting how nobody really knows, to your point, like everybody can kind of comment here and there about like, where AI is going. And we just ultimately won't know just because it's changing so quickly. But it is exciting to kind of see that there might be a next generation of creator, in whatever way that manifests, that will be using these kind of tools in ways that we won't even think about, like in terms of creation, and hopefully it still stays in this way that the soul of it is still a human being, and it's not just like fully kind of. And I think people will it's kind of like how like you have like 8K cameras now, but there's still people shooting on film.
Yeah.
There is still something about the organic that exists there that like I think will still continue to exist, even if there is like this new vertical or this new avenue of like maybe AI films or like AI, art or whatever it might be. But yeah, it is just really, and especially because you're a writer too, so I'm sure it definitely hits a different chord maybe than for other people.
That's an important thing that you touched on that I like to bring up as well too, which is we all got our start because of some advancement in technology,
Yeah.
like I have, the DSLR mirrorless camera revolution to thank for the start of my career.
Yeah.
I did not go to film school. I would not have gotten to the traditional film industry. The reason I have a job and have done what I've done is because my buddy Jeremiah was shooting social ads on a $2,000 camera,
And I'm sure at the time there were people that like balked at it and like was just like this could never,
you guys are just making crap. This isn't high quality. This isn't real,
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting to think about that. Out of curiosity, I know we started with this, but I wanted to come back to it. Blessed that you're busy. But it seems like a lot of people aren't in the traditional sense in the like climate right now. Are you seeing a lot of that? Like you're in LA, obviously you have friends in LA, family, I'm sure, and all of that. Like what is the current like climate when it comes to filmmaking in LA?
Like I mentioned before, I'm a little bit removed from it because once I get on the production side of a project, that might take, 6 weeks to a couple months. So I kind of only am like, and a lot of the shoots I'm doing are like 1 to 2 day shoots if I'm on set at all. So my interfacing with the bulk of on-set production folks is less and less. So I don't want to speak in the sense of like, I know exactly how it's going right now, but generally speaking, I do get the feeling that, there are fewer set days. And even like from my high level position, there's been fewer client outreach. They're trying to, do less shooting on set, just trying to be more thrifty with how they're doing things, and just try to get more for not necessarily going the traditional commercial production route all the time. So yeah, I know it's been up and down, and I know that there are some people I've seen who have been having a hard time with it. And it's tough. I mean, those are the folks who bring the visions that I have to life. Those are the people who are actually have the hard skills that are making that stuff happen. So it's tough to hear when I get on set with them, like, oh yeah, I haven't worked in a month. I'm really glad you called. It's like, oh, that's a bummer to hear that. It's tough. It's tough. And that's also just like where we're talking so much about like the industry's changing, AI changing things. And it's like, man, the more you can diversify, the more you can understand about business, the more offerings you have to bring to the market, the more secure place you're going to be in financially. Just like you may not be able to be in this traditional, role that you've been in forever. Maybe AI will take over a chunk of what you do, or maybe just people won't be spending as much as they have been. So like, how do you respond?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I totally agree with you. I think the interesting thing that's happened with filmmaking, but maybe largely in LA, is that you got into like very highly specialized positions, and then you were just the guy to do that one thing or the girl to do that one thing. And then when the industry started to dry up a little bit, or a lot, it kind of prevented maybe the flow that was there, like pre pandemic, pre AI, pre strikes, and all of that stuff to kind of go away. And it feels like now more than ever, it is so important to like not just be like kind of the one sided like type of like freelancer, and you might have to be multifaceted and have more tricks up your sleeves in terms of like the different things that you're doing. And it's interesting that may not always even look like just filmmaking. You know, like I love kind of your kind of maybe like full circleness of that, where it's like it looks like writing for you, or products, or speaking and filmmaking, and it's not just like one thing that if this one thing just went away, like it's not going to like devastate you.
Yeah. And that's something that I like want to encourage people to think about as well. Obviously, if being a filmmaker has been your MO for a decade and you're seeing it dry up a little bit, that's tough. Like that's a bummer, you know. But like filmmaking isn't, you can always make films. You know what I mean? Like I think what the real bummer comes from is like you may not be able to pay all the bills or make the exact kind of money that you always have been able to make forever. But if you really love it, you can always make films. You can always do this kind of work on your own. Maybe you have to supplement income. Maybe you have to get another kind of job. The industry changes, but like no one can take your passion and your vocation from you. If your calling is to tell stories through film, you can always do it. Easier and more accessible now than ever in a way, right? Like, you know, so I don't know, like it is tough. I don't want to take that away from anybody or minimize this at all, but you can do it. You know, you can still do what you love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not minimizing. I think if anything, it's encouraging for people to know that like, hey, they might have to like rethink. It's probably not going to go back to what it was. Yeah. And to be able to think outside of the box here a little bit, in terms of, which is already a core strength that they have in freelancing. But it might just need to look like now multiple streams or multiple verticals, or, you know, different ways to think about it than you were just the Union Electric that was just going to plug in something on one particular set, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think in many ways, if you can embrace it, there's probably beauty behind that, like to learn a new trade, or to take those muscles that you've had in one place and kind of diversify it a little bit. Because it seems like there's, as much as things are drying up, to the earlier point, there's also never been more ways to like have multiple revenue streams.
It's true.
Because of the advancements of technology too.
Yeah.
Do you see that with like, with your stuff? Is it all time-based in the sense that like it's all like a trade for like service, or time for money? Or are there also like passive ways that you think of when you think of like the overall kind of pie of like, you know, the different things that you're doing from a business standpoint?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a better understanding of this time for money exchange and optimize that. And then also trying to get a better understanding of like what products can really do, right? Because just building and growing a service-based freelance business, it has been this like days for money, time for money type thing. Occasionally, you know, I have the opportunity to charge on more of a value-based thing. Like I'm coming in here to do this kind of thing. It doesn't take me that long, but you need it. So I'm going to charge based on value. But now selling more products, it's forced me to learn a lot about a product-based business, which is obviously so different than a service-based business. And, you know, I had a tough time getting my service-based freelance business going the first few years. And then after a few years, you know, the flywheel started going and I had the connections that made it work. I feel like I'm back in that place again with the product-based business, you know, where it's like, I try something, it works. I try it again, it doesn't work. And I don't know the difference between the two. Like, why did it work one time and not another time? And these are all things that I'm coming to understand. And then also now just having been in my career and trying to create more of this like knowledge-based pathway for me, just through the books and through some speaking I've been doing and through these other kinds of products, trying to think more of like, how can I charge based on value? Like, what is my strategic competitive advantage and how can I leverage that to make a lot of money, really bringing specific value for a business or for a person, that kind of thing. Those are kind of the things I've been thinking about. But again, no shade. Like people talk a lot about like you should never trade time for money. It's like if you got a skill and you're really good at it and it doesn't take a whole lot of brainwaves anymore, you just have it in a habit level place and you can show up and do it and you make good money with it. Oh, that's the dream, because then you have so much extra headspace to work on the other stuff or just enjoy your life. If you can just show up and just do your thing and make a good day rate, like that's also awesome, so there's different avenues to it. I've been thinking more about it and like how to maximize all three of those and optimize like, okay, if I really am making a day rate, like what is the ideal day rate? Like where's my zone and how can I make the most for that with the least amount of like, real mental energy thinking about that? How do I save that mental energy for the other stuff, the value-based stuff, or for me, the product-based stuff,
What is that? What is the ideal day rate?
As far as
you don't have to say a specific number for you, but like, how do you come to that conclusion that this is the ideal day rate?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I guess what I tell people for a day rate is like, whatever gets you excited. Like, what is a day rate where you'd be like, yes, let's go. I'm ready to work. I'm gonna work hard and we're gonna nail it. And I feel totally in my zone. Like I feel totally confident in delivering a really quality product and I'm getting paid an amount that gets me excited. I think that's just a format that helps people, because sometimes people will reach out on my budget videos or in email or on DM and they're like, hey, I'm just showing up to shoot this thing for one day. Like, how much should I charge? And I'm like, they were trying to get a pulse of the market, et cetera, but I tell them like, what's a day rate that would get you excited? What's a day rate that would have you waking up early, double checking everything, making sure you have everything ready to go. You're 30 minutes early. You have a great positive attitude. Like, what is that day rate that pulls that out of you? Because that would be your ideal day rate.
I struggle with it a little bit just because I might be oversharing here, but like, I know a lot of people, like when they think of an hourly rate or a day rate or whatever, like that might hold some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like commitment or accountability to like the thing that they're providing. And I struggle with this sometimes because I'm almost giving it my all, no matter if I'm making $200 or I'm making $2,000 like in a day. But I do know people, normal people maybe, that actually do operate that way. Like that the rate does get them excited, or like, it maybe allows them to say no to something else. But it's hard for me sometimes because like once it like hits my bank account or whatever it is, like it's just like, like money for whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to like think through like for you, does that change? Like in terms of like, let's just say it was a difference between like $200 and $800 like a day. Does that allow you to like work harder, or is it more that like you could say no to something else? And
it's tough to frame it in that way of like,
I'm sorry, it's an unfair way of
no,
saying
but it's true. Like I think no one wants to say like, I'm giving you a discount, so I'm not going to work as hard, right? And and that may not be like totally true. Like you're still going to get the work done. You're going to be there all the hours. You're going to work hard. You're going to hustle. Like all that stuff, right? But like, what helps you bring like a really positive, redemptive energy, and maybe it's not money, like, but I think there is a difference in the sense where you're like, oh, I feel like I'm getting squeezed a little bit here. I feel like they're asking for a lot. Whereas you're like, oh, this is more than I've made in the past, or this is like a really solid day rate. It frames it for you in the sense of like, yeah, I'm going to be there and I'm going to bring solutions to the table. I'm going to be really proactive. I'm going to like try to bring a redemptive, positive energy to this, et cetera. So
I don't know if you ever like feel this, but like sometimes it's like the low paying jobs that require more work or more taxing energy.
For sure.
And then it's like the high paying jobs that like ask
Easy.
almost like nothing of you.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm even in that framing, it's always funny to me that like sometimes it never might be worth it to some degree, or like on those like call it like smaller things. And I've had to like personally disassociate myself with like time and money, even though like I'm constantly trading for it. But yeah, I was curious if you handled it any differently or not, or if I'm insane to think of it in this way. Because there's to me, it almost feels like regardless of the money, there's two types of people. One that will do the bare minimum to like get to the next thing, and then somebody that will just kind of like do it because they're passionate about it and they're constantly like maybe like doing more than that's asked for, regardless of the pay. And obviously you want to fairly compensate people and you want to be fairly compensated. And sometimes there's just a mindset kind of difference in like that freelance world that kind of comes.
Yeah. And I feel that like, maybe I feel a little bit removed from this in the sense that like, I studied communication and I didn't necessarily set out from the beginning to be a filmmaker. It wasn't necessarily like felt like it was my calling or my passion to be a producer, but it has been a job that I discovered that I've loved a lot, that I've enjoyed a lot. So I feel like maybe one step removed from someone who maybe is like a lifelong passion of filmmaking, right? Where it's like any set, any opportunity, any shot they work on, they're putting all of it into that. Because I do feel that a little bit more with my writing and with speaking, like someone has me on a podcast, for example, or, speak at their little workshop or event or something like that. Like I don't care if I get paid. I want to be there and I want to do it. Like that's the kind of like passion level that I have on that side. So that does kind of cloud the money judgment a little bit. It clouds the business judgment a little bit, to be honest, because it's like, I'm just happy to be on, like I'm happy to be doing this work.
Yeah,
this
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, totally. But there is a day, right? Even for me, like, speaking at an event or speaking at someone's, workshop online or talking to their online community, I'll do it for free, at this point in my career. But then there's other people I connect with who are like, yeah, we'll pay you, X or pay you X, Y, or Z. And it's like that it's a signal to me of like, really, you got to nail it, like you got to nail it. So that it just has me doing more prep work. It has me getting in a better mindset. It has me getting a better night's sleep. It has me being more hydrated. It's like these little things that like, they're paying me to show up and nail it.
Yeah. It's a level of accountability that I think like kind of comes from it, right? Like you're exchanging value there. So there's accountability that needs to be there. You have to be on your A game, prep, make sure that like you perform. Because if you don't, then, it kind of creates a tension there, obviously. Versus like if you're just doing it for free and you bombed, it's like, oh, it sucks that you bombed, but it's not necessarily that like you owe somebody something. So no, I totally owe that.
Yeah.
Well, Reese, I appreciate this. This has been so fun to kind of do this with you. And I hope you come back and do it again.
It's been a blast to be here. I feel like the time flew by.
It did, yeah. I was like, is this already an hour and a half?
We're gonna be chatting for like 90 minutes. And I was
we
like,
could have been watching a movie together this whole time and rolling the credits right now.
For sure. It's been a pleasure to be on. You ask fascinating questions.
I hope more and more people are able to come on this to share their knowledge. And like just like you, I think you were a perfect example of that. This knowledge and information that usually is siloed, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm most interested in. So I'm grateful that you were able to do this for our audience.
Well, thanks again for having me on, and thanks for being generous to share all this with everybody. This is great.
Thanks for tuning in to Produced With. You can find more episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Produced With is brought to you by Saturation. If you're a filmmaker, check out saturation.io, the all-in-one production budgeting, payments, and actualization tool. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show, leave us a review, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. Special thanks to our producer Eugene Wade and editor Stephen Gray for helping shape the conversation and making it sound as good as it does. And hey, check out the show notes. Join the community and find us online.